Hey guys, so today we're doing TikTok reads. I picked out a few of the popular TikTok books or authors to read from, and I basically tried to narrow it down to like 5 different types. It wasn't 5 books, it was like some of them was authors, some of them was books. So I'm just gonna kind of go through those. I picked 5 because I felt like that was a good number. And I'm just gonna take us which ones are good options to read, like which ones are actually worth the hype. So which one do I want to start with? Emily Henry is my first one. I'm actually doing a whole ranking of Emily Henry books. That should be probably the next video after this one. It's me ranking Emily Henry books from worst to best, which even the worst is best. Emily Henry books, I'm just gonna give her just a 5 out of 5 all across the board. I know that some of her books are a 4 for me, some of them are a 5, but I'm just gonna give her as an author a 5 out of 5. She writes the best romance that I've ever read. It's amazing, it's well fleshed out, it's well rounded, it's full of amazingly developed characters who are also flawed, and it's just good. I have physically Happy Place, You and Me on Vacation, and Beach Read, but then I read Book Lovers on my iPad. It was on Apple Books. She's coming out with another book in 2024, so I'm just looking forward to adding that to my list. But yeah, Emily Henry as a whole gets a 5 out of 5 for me. I found her out through TikTok because she blew up on TikTok, mainly with You and Me on Vacation, which is called People We Meet on Vacation. There we go. So obviously I have Happy Place, and then the other ones there. I would say my favorite one of her books, not to spill the ranking, is Happy Place. That's really the one I recommend. It has the most well fleshed out characters and it's her most recent book. But as a whole, I just think she writes the most amazing romance. And it's not actually full, it's like a romance book, but it's not like full of romance, if that makes sense. Like it's very much romance, but it's about these people's lives and backstories and other problems in life and their friendships and work, and it's always such a well fleshed out story that you're not even feeling like you're reading a romance. You feel like you're reading a book about people's lives. You're just like fly on the wall in people's lives, and it's just such a nice, you just get really sucked into it. My next one is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Was another one that pretty much blew up on TikTok. As BookTok was kind of picking up speed, like Taylor Jenkins Reid was right up there. It was mainly with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's one of the most, used hashtags on TikTok for good reason. My first book that I read from her was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I've also read Daisy Jones and the Six, so I kind of have more of an opinion on Taylor Jenkins Reid than just Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I want to keep on reading her books. I have all of them now. I have Carrie Soto's Back, Maybe in Another Life, One True Loves, and Forever Interrupted. I want to read all 4 of those. But like I said, I did read Seven Husbands and Daisy Jones and the Six, and I can say that it was not just like a one-time thing. Like, she didn't just get lucky with the one book and just write one good book and then after that she's done. Like, I thought Seven Husbands was like my favorite book of all time, and then I read Daisy Jones and I felt like it was even more well developed. The characters were even more, like, it was just like she's really just beating herself every time she writes a new book. I think Seven Husbands is more focused on one woman and a bunch of people like around her. So it's written in kind of dual POV. It's written in the POV of Evelyn Hugo, who is a starlet back in the day in kind of like the 70s, and then the other POV is someone writing a biography about her life, and you switch and you go through obviously the 7 husbands, but it seems like it would just be like a focus on all her past relationships, but it's not. It's so much more than that. It's about like everything that those relationships meant to her and what they changed in her life, and it was just so good. And then I read Daisy Jones, and it was written as like an interview, and it would be separated into like different areas of their life, like different eras they went through, because it's about a band, Daisy Jones and the Six. So obviously they would interview all these people and they would go through like, oh, tour from this year to this year and etc. And they would just be literally like, oh, Daisy, what she said, and then someone else something else. It was literally written like an interview. I bet it would be really nice to listen to that as a audiobook, because it would sound like a podcast kind of. For a large chunk of reading Daisy Jones and the Six, you genuinely believe that these people are real, this band was real, it existed. It makes you feel like, oh, why can't I go on Spotify and look up Daisy Jones and the Six? Well, that's crazy. And then with Evelyn Hugo, it's pretty much the same thing. It's written in a slightly different format, but you still feel like, why can't I watch any movies with Evelyn Hugo in them? That's suspicious. That's weird. So that's I'm giving Taylor Jenkins Reid a 5 out of 5. I haven't read all of her books, but so far what I did read was both 5 out of 5. So I'm just gonna give her as a whole, the author, 5 out of 5. Great BookTok pick. Normal People blew up on TikTok. Not only the book blew up, but also the TV show, the one on BBC. I loved the TV show. It was so like, it pretty much portrayed perfectly what I was seeing when I was reading that book. Where is Normal People? It's also up here with my literary fiction / romance area. And I have Normal People, Conversations with Friends, and Beautiful World, Where Are You? But I've only read Normal People. She writes in a very weird way. Like, there's no quotation marks, so whenever there's speech, like characters speaking with each other, there's no quotation marks. You kind of get used to that after a while. So many amazing quotes. It is a book pretty much fully based on miscommunication and constant miscommunication. It's basically just a prolonged situationship that they're going through, and it's from high school till like uni and after uni, and it's just such an infuriating book with two extremely flawed characters surrounded by other flawed characters. It's just such a perfect, like, realistic, annoying story, and it was just so amazing. It was everything I ever wanted it to be. I literally devoured that book in like a day. Honestly recommended. I'm not a massive fan of miscommunication. I hate miscommunication, but I hate it because usually it's done really poorly and it's just used as a plot device to create like the third act conflict or the third act breakup in romance books. This was just a whole miscommunication, and every time they were super close to getting together, they just didn't, and it was just like a beautiful, painful book. And I'm so excited to read Sally Rooney's other stuff, but I've heard mixed things about the other ones, but I've also heard mixed things about Normal People, so I think it's just like a preference for her type of writing. I think she writes very moody books, and now that it's like autumn, winter time, I think it's the perfect time to read more Sally Rooney. Like, she writes very themed, aesthetic, ambiance books. That was like the best way I could have described her books. It's just like autumn, winter time. And that's when I read Normal People, and it just literally stuck with me. And the TV show is super aesthetic and moody and gloomy, and it looks like it's filmed in autumn, like all the time. So I highly recommend Sally Rooney. I don't actually have this as a physical book for probably a good reason. I listened to this on audio when I first moved here and I was unpacking some boxes, and it's called We Were Liars. I gave this one a 3 out of 5, but I actually think it's like a 2 out of 5. The whole book was amazing. I actually really liked the book. I thought it was written really well. It reads very YA, which I'm kind of growing out of, but it's fine. Like, that's besides the point. I thought the story was fun. It was full of rich people, annoying people, flawed characters. I do love a flawed character myself, so flawed characters, the whole thing. And then we get to the end, and the plot twist destroyed the whole book for me. Like, I hated the plot twist. It gave, without spoiling much, it gave very much like GCSE English literature. Like, it's what like an 11-year-old would come up with, and it just wasn't, it for me personally. And I also then took it upon myself to get Family of Liars on audio, and I would have given it probably another 2 out of 5. I actually can't even remember what happened in that book. I had to keep on restarting it. I think I listened to the first hour probably 10 times. So I actually wasted like 10 hours of my life trying to get into this book because I kept on losing track of what was happening because I wasn't focusing and I wasn't listening, and it was just frustrating and annoying. And I just felt like the second one was probably like more boring than the first one, but it wasn't as, it was actually a prequel. It happened before what happened in We Were Liars, and I felt like it was more boring, but there was less of like cheap twists, whereas We Were Liars just used a very cheap twist. In my opinion, it just wasn't. I don't know, maybe they thought it was, maybe someone thinks it's deep, maybe it's me that's the problem, but I loved the book as a whole until it got to that last bit. So like, I don't know, I'm giving it 2 out of 5, maybe it's a 3 out of 5, maybe it's a 2.5, maybe it's like bang in the middle between 0 and 5. I personally wouldn't really recommend it just because it feels like, you know, when you read a book and then the ending is bad, so it's like really unsatisfying. But if you don't really care about the ending that much and you just want to read a book that you can like get lost in, just a very nice thriller, mystery type book, and you don't really care about the ending, maybe read it and it'll be like a nice 3 out of 5 for you guys. But personally for me, it was like a 2.5 too because of the ending. I just hate an unsatisfying ending. Anyway, then recently I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I also have physically. It's up at the top. I'm not going to reach for it. It is the most amazing. It's like top 3 books I read this year. We're in beginning of October now. Honestly, top 3, top 2, maybe even top 1. I devoured that book. Any spare time I had, I was reading that book. I had a highlighter, I was highlighting, I was underlining. There were so many quotes that were just like amazing and just perfectly described how you feel in certain moments in your life. This was obviously a much more exaggerated version of life, but it was just written super well, and I feel like it was a great depiction of mental health and how it can really destroy your life and eat you from within. It was so good. It's essentially about the main character. She's very unlikable. She's a very flawed character. As you can see, I really do love a flawed character. There's something about it that just like is right. Like, I love it. She's a very unlikable character. She has this friend that is super clingy and she can't get rid of her, but she doesn't particularly want to be friends with her anymore. But it's like nice to have someone, I guess, check in on her. And she has this ex-boyfriend who's a douche and she doesn't like him, but she liked having attention from someone, so she keeps on like butt dialing him when she's drunk or something. Her parents both died and she had a trust fund, and she just like doesn't really have to work. She just finished uni. She like had some odd jobs here and there that she got fired from because she didn't try very hard, but she just has this apartment paid for, and her parents' house is like empty somewhere and she can sell it if she wants to, or rent it if she wants to, or live in it. Her life is basically kind of set for her financially. She doesn't really have many worries, but her life is so empty and so just like yuck. And so she just is abusing different prescribed medications, mainly for anxiety or for insomnia, and just mixing and matching, and then like basically blacking out for days on end. And then she keeps on getting stronger and stronger medicines from this therapist who definitely shouldn't be a therapist and shouldn't be prescribing anything to anyone. She wants to see if she can have her year of rest and relaxation, if that can make her life better and if it can make her a better person. And it's just such an interesting and depressing journey that you go on that is kind of unsatisfying, but it's like just perfect. I don't know, I love that book, and it was a 5 out of 5 for me easily. So I don't know why it took me so long to read that book. I didn't know what to expect from the plot, from the like title and the cover. I just couldn't quite figure out what the plot was going to be, and it definitely wasn't what I was expecting, but it was amazing. And it was basically like set in the early 2000s, and it was set in the early 2000s. It was just super like, I don't know, there was a certain aesthetic to it that I imagined in my head. I think it would be a great movie, honestly. And my last one is Every Summer After, which I actually have right here. It's the only book that I can actually bring up for you guys. This, first of all, this floppiness, amazing. This was a 5 out of 5 for me. Once again, I keep on slating TikTok recommendations, but there are some books that I found on TikTok that have been nothing but 5 out of 5s. Like, really, out of this list, only We Were Liars was a flop for me. Everything else was a 5 out of 5. So clearly TikTok is doing something for me, something right. This is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. She has written other books actually that I'm looking forward to reading. This one has just been up here for a while, and I kept on looking at it being like, I can't wait to read you. For some reason, this cover was just giving me everything I needed, and it was coming up to the end of summer, and I was like, I need to finish this before it gets to autumn. And then I'm like, oh, this just isn't the vibe that I want anymore. And it was everything that I wanted it to be. It was 5 summers to fall in love, 1 moment to fall apart. The main character moves in with her parents into this lake house. They use it for the summertime. This is set in Canada, and next door is a family with 2 sons. One's younger, one's older, and her and the younger son become super close friends. With every like time she goes back for the holidays, you can see that they're falling in love with each other more than just friends. So you're building up through the summers. They'll show you like all the times that she saw him, or even like she started coming in between the summer holidays for like Christmas holidays, etc. And then on the other scale of things, it's showing you the present day when they're not friends anymore, and you're kind of figuring out what happened. So you can see that the like past tense chapters are building up to this event, and then in the present tense there's this tension between them because they had to meet up for something. They're forced into a situation where they're having to like address why they're not friends anymore, or why they're not even romantically involved. And it's just so good. I loved so much. It was just such an amazing book. I highlighted a few things. You know, when I take out a highlighter, it's just like immediately you can tell that I'm enjoying a book. Like if within the first few chapters I'm like starting to highlight things, it just means that something's up. Even in the first chapter, so it says now and it's present tense, and I got to literally page 2. She said, I thought I was doing a good job of giving the relationship a real chance, but in the end Sebastian recognized my indifference, and he was right. I didn't care about him. I didn't care about any of them. There was only the one, and that one is long gone. And I was like, oh, I'm in for something painful. And I cried, I laughed, I giggled, I kicked my feet. They also mentioned a lot of Polish stuff. The sons were half Polish, and so they would mention a lot of like the mum of the 2 guys. She had a Polish restaurant, and I just kept on highlighting stuff whenever they mentioned Poland because I'm Polish, and I thought it was just so funny that it was like a Canadian set book, but it had so many Polish leanings. I could have actually read this in autumn, even though it's called Every Summer After. I could have read this in autumn and I would have still enjoyed it because I feel like it was the right like warm, cozy feeling, and like kind of sad, kind of gloomy, but like kind of summertimey and warm. So I feel like I still would have enjoyed this, but I felt like I needed to read it in the summer because it's literally called Every Summer After, so I wanted to read it in the summertime. But this is a book that I would actually be willing to reread as well. These are all the TikTok books that I'm recommending, I guess. This turned into like a recommendations video rather than like, is TikTok correct on their recommendations? I think TikTok is correct if you follow the right people whose opinions you trust, or if you have trained your algorithm to show you the kind of books that you know you would enjoy. Because nowadays I don't really come across many books that I don't think I would enjoy. So I guess TikTok is good at recommending stuff for me. That's a great way to end this video. It's super positive. So let me know what books you've read from TikTok, which ones you liked, didn't like, was indifferent about. Subscribe to the bell icon for engagement, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.